One morning, you crouch down to check your tomatoes, and there it is. A dark patch on the bottom of the fruit, soft at the edges, sunken in the middle, already turning black. You check the next one, same thing, the next, same. The plant looks completely fine, leaves green, stems strong, nothing eating it, no visible sign that anything is wrong. And yet the fruit, the whole point of the whole season, the thing you have been watching and waiting on since spring, is rotting from the bottom up before you have ever had a chance to pick it. This is called blossom end rot, and the cure that most gardeners reach for, recommended across forums, sold in garden centers everywhere, does not just fail to fix it, it makes it worse. Part 1. The explanation you have probably already heard, and why it is incomplete. Most people will tell you the same thing: calcium deficiency. Your soil is low in calcium, the fruit is not getting enough, that is why the cells at the bottom are breaking down. It is partly true. The affected tissue genuinely is calcium deficient. But in most gardens, the soil has plenty of calcium, not a little, plenty. Study after study from university extension programs across the world confirms the same finding. Blossom end rot almost never happens because calcium is absent from the soil. It happens because the plant cannot get the calcium from the soil into the fruit. Those are two completely different problems, and treating them the same way, adding more calcium to soil that already has enough, is why so many gardeners fight this season after season without ever getting ahead of it. To understand what is actually happening, you need to understand something about the way calcium moves inside a plant. Part 2. The hidden competition your tomato is losing. Calcium moves through a plant in one direction only, up. It dissolves into water at the roots, travels upward through the xylem, the plant's internal plumbing, and arrives at whatever tissue needs it. But it cannot redistribute itself once it arrives. It cannot move from a leaf into a fruit. It goes where the water goes, and then it stays there. Here is the problem. Leaves transpire constantly. They lose water through tiny pores on their surface all day long, and that loss is what creates the upward pull that draws calcium from the roots. Fruit transpires very little by comparison. So the leaves, breathing hard and losing water constantly, are pulling the majority of calcium toward themselves. The fruit, sitting quietly on the vine, receives far less. Under normal conditions, that balance holds. There is enough water moving through the whole plant to supply everything. But the moment the soil swings between too dry and too wet, the balance breaks. Calcium uptake slows. The plant rations what little is moving. Leaves get priority. They are the most active tissue, the ones the plant cannot function without. The developing fruit gets what is left. And the cells at the very bottom tip of the tomato, the furthest point from the stem, the last to receive anything, begin to collapse. That is the rot you are seeing. This is why blossom end rot almost always strikes the first fruits of the season, formed during the most variable conditions, before watering has found its rhythm. Later fruits on the same plant, once conditions stabilize, often come through completely clean. Same plant, same soil, same calcium, different water consistency, different result. Part 3. The product making things worse. Most gardeners, when they see the rot, reach for a calcium spray or powder. The logic makes sense: if the fruit lacks calcium, add calcium. Here is the problem. Calcium cannot move from the leaves into the fruit. Once it arrives in a leaf, it is locked there. It cannot travel back down into the developing tomato. Spraying the foliage feeds the leaves, which already have enough. It does nothing for the fruit still forming on the vine. And by the time you can see the dark patch on the bottom of a tomato, those cells are already dead. No spray arrives in time to save them, but there is something worse than a product that does not work. Epsom salt, recommended across the internet, passed between neighbors, mentioned in good faith by people who genuinely want to help. The idea is that it prevents blossom end rot. It does the opposite. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate, no calcium at all, and magnesium ions compete directly with calcium ions for the same uptake sites in plant roots. There are only so many of those sites available. When you add Epsom salt to the soil, you flood them with magnesium. Magnesium gets absorbed. Calcium, the thing your fruit actually needs, gets blocked out. Tom Kalb, extension horticulturist at North Dakota State University, put it plainly: Epsom salt does not prevent blossom end rot. It promotes it. You are not treating the problem, you are deepening it. Eggshells are not the answer either. The calcium inside them is locked in calcium carbonate, the same mineral as limestone, and in soil, that structure breaks down over years, not weeks. The calcium does not become available to your plants within a single growing season. You are not feeding your tomatoes this season. You are making a deposit they will never live long enough to withdraw. Part 4. What actually works? The fix is not a product. It is consistency. Consistent soil moisture, never bone dry, never waterlogged, keeps calcium moving steadily through the plant, all the way to the developing fruit. Restore that consistency and the supply chain restores itself. Water deeply and less often. A shallow daily sprinkle keeps moisture at the surface and creates exactly the dry-wet fluctuation that triggers the problem. Water thoroughly instead, once or twice a week, depending on conditions. The goal is for moisture to reach deep into the root zone, not just sit at the top few centimeters. Push your finger several centimeters into the soil before watering. If it still feels damp at depth, wait. Mulch, a 5 to 8 centimeter layer of straw, wood chips, or compost around the base of the plant reduces water evaporation from the soil surface by 40 to 60%. It stabilizes moisture between your waterings, passively, without you doing anything. It buffers against the dry spells that trigger the whole problem. Wait until the soil has warmed before laying it down. Cold, damp soil under mulch slows root development. But once it is in place, it works every hour of every day for the rest of the season. It is the single most effective step most gardeners are not taking. Hold back the nitrogen. Heavy nitrogen feeding drives vigorous leaf growth. More leaves mean higher transpiration, which means fiercer competition for the calcium moving through the xylem. Hold off on nitrogen-heavy fertilizers until after your first fruits have set. Let the plant's energy go into fruit, not foliage. Protect the roots. Hoeing too close to the stem damages the root system that the entire calcium supply depends on. Cultivate carefully near your tomatoes, or better still, let the mulch suppress the weeds so you do not need to disturb the soil at all. The fruit already affected cannot be saved. Those cells are gone. But cut away the dark area cleanly, and in most cases the rest is perfectly edible. Do not throw them away before you check. And the new fruit still forming on the same plant. Once your watering stabilizes, those later tomatoes will very often come through without a mark. This is not a permanent sentence on your garden. It is information. Your plant has been telling you something all along. Now you know what it was saying. There is one more thing closely connected to everything we have covered today. We have talked about what happens when water becomes inconsistent, but there is another way water destroys a tomato harvest, one almost no one recognizes as a watering problem at all. Because the damage looks nothing like rot, it looks like disease, it looks like the plant just giving up. Most gardeners spend years treating the wrong thing. That is what the next video is about. Subscribe so you are there when it goes up, and leave a comment below. Did you see the black rot this season? Which variety? Which part of the garden? What you tell me shapes exactly what comes next.